We live in really, really wild times, man. The far left echo chamber, it really, really is shrinking as more and more people just start to be just shaken awake. They have no choice but to awaken. I mean, by things like, pro-Hamas rallies, mostly peaceful riots that span an entire summer and cost billions in damages and dozens of lives. I mean, people see these things. They see everything and eventually they wake up. A lot of people are starting to realize that their virtue signaling really does have an actual human cost, and they're turning away from the virtue signal. The mob is shrinking, but it isn't getting any less dangerous and it isn't getting any less insane. Andy Ngo, he's an author and a journalist that really has been at the forefront of challenging all the different leftist insanities that we see. He was on Dr. Phil just a little while ago. And Dr. Phil, he's a guy, he's in the fight himself, by the way, and he's really, really kicking ass. They had a pretty interesting talk.
This has gotten really personal with you. Antifa has actually tried to kill you on 2 different occasions. What are you saying is so threatening to them?
So I try through my journalism to inform the public about the threat of violent far-left extremism in the United States. We know very much about the violent far-right, but when it comes to the other side, there's actually a vacuum that exists. So what I did as an independent journalist was to go out with my mobile camera to record what was happening at some of these so-called direct actions and protests, which were branded around things that sounded really wonderful. Social justice, racial justice, Black Lives Matter. But the people behind it were actually espousing an ideology of violent revolution, a destruction of America, destruction of the rule of law. In 2020, they exploited the death of George Floyd to carry out acts of violence across the United States. This wasn't to the benefit of any Black communities. Instead, what we saw were Black businesses, homes, neighborhoods torched to the ground. 4 years later, many of these same strategies and tactics are now being used again at some of these university encampments.
It's obvious why the left hates this guy, right? Because he deals in truth. I mean, the more they attack you, the more they come for you, the closer you are to the target. I mean, you are over the target. If they're attacking and you're too close, they don't just come for unpopular false speech. I mean, they come for the truth. And just think about this. If any of these campus protesters that we saw actually knew what they were supporting, actually knew the atrocities, actually knew, the cultural Marxists that were really pulling the strings of all this stuff, actually knew what those people were after, do you really think that there would be any widespread encampment protests on college campuses? Because I don't think there would be. I don't think there's a chance. This is why they need to attack the truth. They need to keep their victims pissed off and stupid.
I was on the UCLA campus when they took down that encampment and interviewed Jewish students getting encircled on campus by these pro-Palestinian students. They would link arms and make circles around. They'd block them where they couldn't go to their classes. They were shoving them, pushing them, assaulting them, tearing their books away from them, and putting up all these banners, death to Jews, drawing stars of David on the ground, stomp here to kill a Jew, just all of these things that are intimidation. And administration is doing nothing about it, or very little about it, until finally they get kind of shamed into it. And my problem is these administrators and faculty members, some of them are right in there with them, in the encampments and the demonstrations with them, but they're not teaching critical thinking. They're not teaching these kids to say, wait a minute, where are you from? I don't know you, and how does this make sense? Let's unpack this and see what it is you're asking me to support. Why is that not being taught?
Because there's been institutional capture of American universities. This has been a long-time project of the far left. Many of the radical revolutionary terrorists of the 60s and 70s, after they were convicted and spent time in prison for their organized crimes, went on to become academics and continue to be in academia.
Yeah, I mean, most of you know this. Most of you also know that this is exactly what bred Barack Obama. Bill Ayers, convicted terrorist Marxist turned academic and mentor to Barack Obama. The guy was literally the tip of the spear of institutional capture. I mean, this is who these people are. And honestly, you really have to give them credit for a pretty damn impressive long game. I mean, you obviously can't just convince your neighbors to hate America and to love communism. But if you get a hold of their kids young and you foster their hate, foster their paranoia, and literally make their intellectual poisoning possible all the way through university, then that's a wrap, man. I mean, that's a win. And that is what they've done. And this is how you go to sleep in what you think is a normal-ish world one day. And then the next morning you wake up and there's kids at Columbia calling for the genocide of Jews. I mean, so the question is not, how did this happen? That almost doesn't even matter. I mean, the real question is, how the hell do we stop this? And I think I see how this ends. I mean, the plan is the destruction of America through overwhelming the immigration system, destroying the currency through bad monetary policy, destroying culture by essentially confusing every fact you can and blurring every line that exists. I mean, it's literally called the Cloward-Piven strategy. They literally wrote this shit down for us in the 1960s and they warned us. But, what I think Cloward and Piven, what I think they missed is that we have federalism in the US. And obviously, federalism can't stop the destruction of currency, right? But it can stop everything else. And we already kind of see it. Blue cities and blue states are failing in places like Texas and Florida. And it's looking like Tennessee is up and coming. These places are keeping U-Haul in business all by themselves, but we'll see how it plays out, man. But it all is not lost, but that's just my take, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.